And now, live from the studios of Freedom's Phoenix, Ernest Hancock.
Yeah, Jim Traficant knows exactly what he's up against. It's the evil new world one government empire of. They, them, those. There are those that just want to be left alone, and there are those that just won't leave you alone. And Jim's one of the guys that just want to be left alone. And every time you doink him, just like a lot of a big segment of American society going, oh, I don't like to be doinked none too much. Now, one of the things that Jim Traficant used to great advantage was the 1-minute speech. Now, the way the rules are in the House of Representatives, a congressman, if you're saying anything, one, you're protected, from any slander or libel. You can go up there and you can say black is white all you want, and there's not anything anybody can do about it to you personally. That doesn't mean they won't come after you, but, there's no prosecution for that act. So a congressman is protected. He can say whatever he wants. The 1-minute thing, he used a great use, and he's going to tell us about that a little bit. But he wants to tell me, Lorena Bobbitt, remember that? Kind of bobbed off her husband a little bit, And his whole thing, he wants to give me a reason why he did the 1 minute. I have no idea. The only thing I remember about that, I didn't pay any attention, except that I remember a talk show host on some rock station or something. He just had one question that just made me cringe. He goes, I just want to know, did Lorena use a serrated knife? Well, go ahead and give me your 1 minute.
Let me give you a little background on the 1 minute. When I was a new member of Congress, you get some of these bills down there. They're 60 minutes of debate, Ernie, and the Republicans get 30 minutes, the Democrats 30 minutes, and then you have pros and cons on both sides. So you might be for an issue on the Democrat side, and there's only 15 minutes allotted. So after all, there's 250 members. After all the big shots open their mouths, you don't get a chance to speak. So I start using the 1 minute beforehand to speak on the salient issues of the day.
Okay, tell me what the 1 minute beforehand thing is. What's the rule?
Anybody can stand up and give a 1 minute speech. And you're limited to 1 minute on any subject you want. It's open forum. In fact, it got to the point where people used to write to me and give me things to talk about. I developed sort of a cult following.
Okay, so you go up to the Speaker of the House and you say, I
ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revising stem my remarks. They usually have an opening while everybody's setting up legislation to give maybe 10 on each side or 15 on each side, sometimes as many as you want to give them. Depends on the schedule. But anyway, I would do it. I made a habit of doing it. And after a while, I spoke out on issues to help my area, no doubt about it, and issues that concern the country. But one thing I want to say to you, even though I was protected by the speech and debate clause, I never said anything on the House floor that I didn't say publicly. I never said something that wasn't true on the House floor. When I called Janet Reno a lesbian and said she should be removed, because she was compromised, owned by the mob in Florida, and in fact, hands were tied for doing anything on that Clinton deal with China. I said that on the Novak show as well and could have been sued, and I said, Janet, go ahead and sue me. Maybe that's the only way we'll get your ashes in court. But now, so I usually had a message, so give me some background. They got to be sort of popular. And I come to my staff one week, and they said, we're getting overwhelmed with phone calls about Lorena Bobbitt. I said, what? Lorena Bobbitt. They want to know when you're going to speak about Lorena Bobbitt. They're waiting. And I sort of laughed. Now, Ernie, Now,
let me go ahead and tell the audience who Lorena Bobbitt was real quick.
Go ahead.
5 seconds. Lorena Bobbitt became famous because she was being abused by her husband, and he forced her into sex, I guess. And then while he was sleeping, she took a knife and cut his penis off. And then threw it, out in the yard or something. They reattached and he started doing porn or something. That's all I know about it. So this is, how that gets to a congressman 1 minute. We will find out. Go ahead.
Ernie, I'm getting all these calls. In 17 years, I never did a limerick, a little rhyme. I did one. I woke up with an idea, and I decided to give it. And Ernie, when I started this speech, they were coming out of the cloakroom. This speech was faxed all over the world. So help me God. I come out and I said, there once was a woman from Manassas who got tired of all the hassles. Claiming she'd been raped by her spouse in her very own house, went to the kitchen to get a knife, fully prepared to take her husband's life. But realizing that such a crime is much too heinous, decided instead to cut off his painless. Now, Ernie, I used the word painless because I didn't want them to rule me out of order. They were so mesmerized, they wrote penis in a congressional record, and I let it in. And I closed out. I said, now, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if this man plays the piano, but from here on out, he'll sing like a soprano. But listen to this. Here's the punchline, though, Ernie. But if he really, really did rape his wife, maybe, just maybe, he deserved that knife. I then said I yield back any outstanding body parts still missing. And I got the hell out of there. This speech, Ernie, was all over the country. But the bottom line was, listen to this. If he really, really did rape his wife, maybe, just maybe, he deserved that knife. And I agree that. There was a subliminal message in everything I said.
Well, go ahead and talk about some of the others. Let's give me a 1 minute on the IRS.
Well, I would more or less say, I would cite and chronicle an issue and say Joe Jones from New Mexico was raided by 3 IRS agents. They had no warrant. They found him in the bathroom, and they confiscated his rubber ducky or whatever he did. I say, now, Mr. Speaker, I think it's time that we grab these IRS agents and handcuff them to a chain-link fence and flog them with their own tax code. When is it where, without a warrant, in the constitutional provisions assigned to government entities, they can come into one's home? I yield back my balance of my time and the actions and the crimes of the Internal Rectal Service. Believe me, I did one almost every week, Ernie. It got to the point where the IRS actually made a statement, one of their leaders on national TV, and said, we got a bad reputation because this guy, Jim Traficant from Ohio, he's turning America against us. Literally. It was the best compliment I ever had, other than one compliment from Dan Rostenkowski, by the way. And I went on the floor the next day and I said, hey, listen, do I hear violins? Should we have a pity party for the Internal Rectal Service? Worthless bastards.
Okay, now let's give me a 1 minute on Israel, man.
Well,
only 1 minute?
1 minute I made on Israel, I remember that made a lot of enemies. It was, I said, everybody's saying that things are going to work out in the Middle East. I said, listen, when Yitzhak Rabin and King Fahd are both singing Onward Christian Soldier, there's going to be war in the Mideast, and America's going to be right in the middle of it. The other one I made that made a lot of enemies was the Palestinian children are God's children too. And I have nothing against Israel, but I believe that Israel is wrong, and America, by being wrong, is inviting terrorism and will import terrorism to our shores because of our one-sided policy in the Mideast. So not all of my little speeches were comedy. Some of them were relatively hard, Ernie.
Okay, before you really got targeted, okay?
I was targeted from 1983. When I beat the federal government and the IRS in 83, Ernie, they couldn't live with that. Believe me, Ernie.
I said that wrong. I beg forgiveness. Let's talk about the final act of getting you in prison. What was your rhetoric from, like, say, 98 to 2002, certainly, up before we hit 9/11, and what did you have to say after 9/11 that got them all angry with you?
Listen, the speech after 9/11, I mean, no one would even look me in the eye. I says, Congress has got to look in the mirror for 9/11. We are at fault. Our one-sided foreign policy, especially that in the Mideast, has now brought the violence of Mideast to our own doorstep. We are to blame. And America should heed the first president, George Washington, and we should be staying out of foreign entanglements. I was called an anti-Semite because I brought Demjanjuk home, that a retired auto worker, and proved he was innocent. I was the number one target of American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. Now look, in the last 10 years, Ernie, they had 4 AIPAC agents arrested for spying on America. That's capital offense. None of them ever went to prison. They
in the middle of it, Jim Traficant.
I also said they have a stranglehold on the American Congress, and they are going to, in fact, cause Third World War for us.
And he might be right. Now, this is what we'll get back. We're going to talk about Ron Paul.